can't afford to mess up the early rounds of your fantasy draft, because if you do, there's no way you're winning your league. So let this video be your cheat sheet for the first 2 to 3 rounds of your drafts, as I'm going to talk through my top 24 overall players for 2025. And this is going to be based on real stats, role changes, offseason moves, and the current environments of these players right now. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Sal Vetran. I've helped over 10,000 people win more fantasy leagues just the past few years alone. And let's start at the top at the beginning of my tier 1 here, and you can see I have 3 names that we're going to get into. I have Ja'Marr Chase, Saquon Barkley, and Bijan Robinson. They're ranked in that order, 1, 2, 3 for me, and we can start with Ja'Marr Chase, who last year was the #1 overall wide receiver in fantasy, but he wasn't just #1, because this dude scored 4 more points per game than anybody else in fantasy, which was the exact same gap from #2 to #20 in the wide receiver finishes. He led the NFL in red zone targets, he racked up 127 catches, and he had over 1,700 yards and 17 touchdowns. And for the 3rd time in the last 4 seasons, Ja'Marr Chase had a week where he scored 50 fantasy points, and this was last year. You can see against the Ravens, 11 catches, 264 yards. He's had multiple of these massive games against Baltimore in his career, 3 touchdowns on a whopping 17 targets. Just insane, which means that his 50 points are literally at least once a year, 3 out of the last 4 years, just single-handedly winning you a week. And now he's in the exact same offense. It's still going to be pass heavy, still have probably a bad defense where they have to keep up, still has Joe Burrow with the exact same competition. T. Higgins is still there, a great wide receiver, but he finished top 5 in fantasy last year, and Ja'Marr Chase was still able to have one of the best wide receiver seasons of all time. After that, though, not much here. Jermaine Burton, we'll see if he's even on the team, if he can have a better year too. A lot of on the field and off the field issues last year. Andre Yoshevich, they're saying that he looks better, but are we really concerned about him being a threat to Ja'Marr Chase? No. They brought back Mike Gesicki at tight end. Again, nobody here is new compared to what Ja'Marr Chase did last year with the same supporting cast. So I would argue there's not a safer and more explosive player in fantasy than Ja'Marr Chase, but who does come close is Saquon Barkley, who last year led all players in fantasy points at the running back position and racked up over 2,000 total yards. I should say he racked up over 2,000 rushing yards alone, and despite his quarterback scoring more rushing touchdowns than him, he did lead all running backs in fantasy points per game. And it really is hard to ignore what Saquon did. You can see right here, last year he had the most runs of 10 plus, 20 plus, 30 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus, and 60 plus yards at the running back position. He was an absolute beast. He also led the position with 25 breakaway runs. Over 7% of his runs last year, which doesn't sound like a high number, but it is, went for at least 10 yards. And now he's still playing in Philly behind maybe the best offensive line in football in a run-heavy system with a more mobile quarterback who will keep defenses honest. I mean, a lot of things are looking good here. He's looking safe. He's looking elite. Some people are going to point to, and I already know the comments are going to say, no running back 1 has finished RB1 overall in back-to-back seasons, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you're not paying for him to finish RB1 overall. You're paying for his situation and the fact that his floor is probably like RB3 and his ceiling is RB1, which not a lot of other guys, if any, can say. Maybe the only other guy who can say that is going to be my running back 3 here, and that is going to be Bijan Robinson, because we saw it last year. From week 6 to week 18, when he finally started to get all of the work and Tyler Algier was phased out, Bijan was the #1 RB in fantasy. During this time, he averaged 23 touches a game. He was 2nd in rushing touchdowns, 4th in RB receptions, and he barely had any dud games. He was just dominating every week. And not to mention, over his final 3 games, albeit a very small sample with his new quarterback, Michael Penix, this dude was averaging 118 rushing yards per game, 27 fantasy points per game, and 2 touchdowns in every single one of his starts. He was a monster. He was finally unlocked in the offense last year, and assuming that continues this year, which there's no reason why it can't, I think Bijan has one of the safest floors and the highest ceilings of the #1 overall player in fantasy. So as of right now, those are the only 3 players in my tier 1 as we dive closer into the season and some news does come out. We start with off my tier 2 with a couple of players here. These are not the only players, but a couple, starting with my #4 player, Jahmyr Gibbs, and the #5, Justin Jefferson. Now, #4, Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, this already, last year, he was the RB2 overall in fantasy, despite barely playing 50% of the snaps. That's impressive. But that's not even the craziest part, because when David Montgomery missed time last year, well, Jahmyr Gibbs turned into like prime Christian McCaffrey for fantasy. In the 3 full games that David Montgomery was out and that he didn't leave early in a game, we saw in those 3 games, look over here, 32.5 fantasy points per game. Between his rushing, between his receiving, 40 receiving yards a game, and rushing 121, this guy was averaging over 160 total yards per game. He had 3 out of 4 games at 150 yards last year when David Montgomery either left early or missed completely. And still, out of all of those games, he only played over 70% of the snaps 1 time. So he was doing this on somewhat limited snap shares, but definitely not limited touches. So if there's a world where Jahmyr Gibbs can go from playing 55% of the snaps like he did overall last year to like 60 to 65%, he could be the RB1 overall. If there's a world again where David Montgomery does miss some time, well, I think in those weeks for sure, you're going to rank Jahmyr Gibbs as a top 2 RB. And now we get to my #5 overall player, Justin Jefferson, who in his career averaged averages 19.4 fantasy points per game, despite playing with quarterbacks during that time like Joshua Dobbs, Nick Mullins, the best quarterbacks being Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. I mean, this guy is a stud. And now he has a new quarterback who's basically a rookie, second-year player. JJ McCarthy has never played an NFL game, and you might be a little bit concerned, but don't be. Because back in 2023, when Justin Jefferson had to play with Nick Mullins and Joshua Dobbs, the dude was averaging 22 fantasy points per game, the wide receiver one in fantasy. Insane. And by all accounts right now in OTAs, well, OTAs are over and minicamp is over, and now training camp is upcoming, but by all accounts, JJ McCarthy looked good. He completed 90 of 101, 89% of his passes, 37 TDs, 1 interception. I mean, this is something that, of course, is not anything too crazy. It's just OTAs that we're looking at here. These should be no tackling. We're not looking at padded practices all that much, but at least it's a sign of good stuff, right? It's not bad stuff like some quarterbacks had going on with the Browns quarterback situation or Anthony Richardson getting hurt. It's only been good things for JJ McCarthy. Honestly, you could argue that this could quietly be the best situation for Justin Jefferson, as he has no new added competition. Maybe JJ McCarthy could be the best quarterback that he's ever played with, and Jefferson is still in his prime at like 26 years old. We continue along my tier 2 here with my number 6 overall player, CeeDee Lamb, and number 7, Christian McCaffrey. For CeeDee Lamb, I mean, this is a guy who averaged 17.6 fantasy points per game last year, despite dealing with his own shoulder injury that was clearly limiting him in games, and also not having Dak Prescott for like half the year. But in those 9 games with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb was averaging 18.5 points per game. That was number 3 at the position, and Dak was playing probably the worst football of his career at that point. But if Dak was to rebound now that he's healthy coming into 2025, I mean, there's a chance that we see CeeDee Lamb return close to his 2023 form, where he led the NFL in touchdowns, where he put up the second best wide receiver season of all time. Do you remember that season? 181 targets. They were force feeding him balls to break records at points with over 1,700 receiving yards. You scroll over here, he's the wide receiver one in the year with 12 touchdowns and 23.7 fantasy points per game. Now, of course, during that time, he had virtually no competition. Now they add George Pickens. Now Jake Ferguson is healthy, so I'm not sure he's going to hit this level, but having over 20 fantasy points per game and finishing as a top 2 wide receiver, definitely in his range of outcomes. And then there's Christian McCaffrey, my number 7 overall player, who as the summer goes on, he's only rising up my rankings more and more. I think since the last time we did this a month ago, he's increased, and there's a good reason for that. The most obvious reason is that Christian McCaffrey, it's only as of this recording June, and he's already 100% healthy. In OTAs, he was able to move, run, and cut at full speed. He did individual drills, but he is 100% healthy and can play today if there was a game. And by the way, he was a full participant in every OTA and minicamp practice. This guy is already ready to go. And when Christian McCaffrey is healthy, he's literally historically good. He has 3 of the top 5 PPR seasons ever when healthy. One of those seasons was back in 2023, the last time that he was healthy, when he led the NFL in rushing yards, second in receiving yards amongst running backs, so had over 2,000 total yards, 21 touchdowns, was an absolute beast, had a top 5 performance ever at the RB position for fantasy. And to make matters even better for him, not only is he healthy, but he has less competition. Jordan Mason is gone, traded to Minnesota. Deebo Samuel is gone, went to the Washington Commanders. If you look at how this team is shaping out with Brandon Ayuk, as of right now, trending to maybe miss the first 4 weeks of the season on the PUP list, Christian McCaffrey is the biggest playmaker this team has. He's going to go out there and see 18, 20 plus touches a game and all the red zone work as well. So don't be shocked if by the next time we do this, Christian McCaffrey is a top 5 overall player, like ahead of Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb for me. Now we're going to move to my tier 3. My number 8 overall player is Ashton Jeanty, the rookie with the Raiders. Number 9 is going to be Puka Nacua. Let's start with Ashton Jeanty. I mean, he's one of the most NFL ready backs coming out of college that we've seen in maybe the last 10 years. Like, it reminds me of Jonathan Taylor to an extent and Saquon Barkley. That's like it. And you can throw probably Bijan Robinson in there as well, but this is a guy who nearly broke Barry Sanders' rushing record last year and was just like an absolute monster when it came to broken tackles. Here's a stat on Twitter from Guru Fantasy World, his number 1 stat that he was talking about the rookies this year. Ashton Jeanty is the first RB in PFF history with 150 broken tackles in a collegiate season. I mean, let's just talk about this again. These dudes play like 12, 13 college games. Having 150 broken tackles, over 10 per game, is like, you do that one time, have 10 or 12 broken tackles in a game, you're elite. He was doing that every game. And now he steps into a Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll offense that all they want to do is run the ball. They are built right now to run the ball and give this rookie minimum 250 plus touches, probably 300 plus touches. He's also starting to get even more passing work. This is a guy who, let me remind you, in his second to last year, 2 years ago back in college, he was one of the best pass catching running backs in college football. And then he just ran the ball so much last year that we didn't get to see it as much. But we're getting to see it right now because in OTAs, the Raiders star rookie RB is running some legit routes downfield. OC Chip Kelly may have a true 3-down back in Vegas, like how he deployed LaShawn McCoy in Philly. Remember LaShawn McCoy in Philly? Like one of the most forgotten about elite running backs from that time span? Yeah, imagine Ashton Jeanty stepping into that role, except he's way better at breaking tackles. And oh yeah, by the way, if you look at the last few years of fantasy football and really the last decade, these top 10 overall running back picks always smash. I mean, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs was top 12, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Jonathan Taylor, the list goes on and on. Now, before we keep going in my tier 3 of players, I just want to let you know that these are only my top 24 players we're going to cover in this video. But if you want to see the expanded top 50 overall rankings completely free, you can head to this page. It's linked down below. All you do is enter your email and I'll send you my top 50 players tiered in every single tier and where they are, the best and worst values. Or you can just head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. So it's linked down below in the description, or head to fantasyrankingsfree.com for my top 50 overall rankings completely free. And if you want to take it a step deeper and get my top 250 overall rankings and all my other draft tools and in-season tools as well, you can check out the Fantasy Blueprint. It's out right now. It's what I use in all my leagues and what 10,000 other people used last year to dominate their fantasy leagues. The Fantasy Blueprint is linked down below right now in the description, or you can go to jointheblueprint.com. That is jointheblueprint.com to get access right now and win more fantasy leagues. We continue on in tier 3 with my number 10 overall player, Malik Nabers, and number 11 overall player, Derrick Henry. Now, Malik Nabers was already a wide receiver 1 last year, and that was while surviving. We're talking about wide receiver 1 not only on his team, but also fantasy football. He finished easily top 12, despite being in maybe the worst situation possible. Terrible O-line, awful quarterback situation. And despite that, every quarterback he played with just force-fed this guy the ball. He led the NFL with a 35% target share because he's that good and had no competition, number 1 in the league. Number 2 in total targets with 170 as a rookie, 11.3 per game, actually led the NFL last year. I mean, this is a guy who was just dominant. He had 10 plus targets in 10 out of 15 games last year. The usage is already there, but plenty of his targets are just uncatchable because the quarterback situation, no matter who it was, and it was like 3 to 4 to 5 different guys, were all terrible. But at least now he's going from Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock and Daniel Jones and that supporting cast to Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, some proven veterans in the league, at least for producing fantasy production for guys. Like Russell Wilson supported George Pickens last year. Jameis Winston, whenever he was on the field, supported everybody. Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, David Njoku, Elijah Moore were all dominant. And then we get a first-round rookie that they traded up for in Jackson Dart, who I assume plays at some point this year, who I would assume is at least better than what Tommy DeVito was doing last year when he was out there. So say what you want about each of these quarterbacks overall. Oh, Russ is that. Oh, Jameis is that. Oh, Jackson Dart, they traded up. They shouldn't have. Anything you want to say, this is an upgraded QB room, no doubt about it. And then for Derrick Henry, let's just stop pretending that Derrick Henry is washed and that he's ever going to fall off. And now, like, he's just so dominant and the situation continues to be great. Like, oh, Derrick Henry last year, 30 plus years old, going into a new offense, doesn't matter. Puts up 1,900 rushing yards with his receiving yards, over 2,100 total yards, scores 18 touchdowns, second most in the NFL last year. Okay, let's not get concerned at all because he did all this, averaging 5.3 yards per carry, despite being 30 years old, because he was finally in an offense since like his early days with the Titans that was built around him specifically. Lamar Jackson is standing there, give the ball to Derrick Henry, that dynamic duo paid off. And oh yeah, this is a pretty crazy stat that I found on Twitter, the Sleeper Ravens account. Derrick Henry last year, he had 1,361 yards after contact, led the NFL. Let me say that again. He had nearly 1,400 rushing yards alone after contact. You know how many guys had 1,400 rushing yards last year? Like 10, less than 10 in the NFL. He was doing that after contact alone. And now he gets to run it back with Lamar Jackson, the same offensive line, no backfield competition anymore, and he's healthy. So yeah, King Henry might not catch passes, but he's still locked in as an overall top 12 player, an RB1 in fantasy, and somebody that nobody wants to face. Like if your opponent has Derrick Henry each week, you're like, God damn, this guy's gonna drop 30 on my head. We remain in tier 3 now with my number 12 overall player, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and number 13, Nico Collins, some wide receivers here. In terms of Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you want safety, Amon-Ra is your guy. He's finished as a top 4 fantasy wide receiver in back-to-back seasons. He's averaging 18.7 points per game over his last 3 years, and he's ranked top 10 in targets, catches, and yards during that time. You name it, Amon-Ra St. Brown has done it. And when it has mattered most, this is just an insane stat. When it has mattered most, in weeks 15 to 17 during the fantasy playoffs and championship, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the last 2 seasons, is averaging 25 fantasy points per game. Let me say that again. 25 fantasy points per game would be number 1 of all time at the wide receiver position. That's what he's done the last 2 years in your most important time, the playoffs and the championship. And even without Ben Johnson there, which is a concern, and Amon-Ra having offseason knee surgery, which he should be good for by training camp, even with those little concerns there, I think Amon-Ra is still fine. This offense, the Lions offense, which is great, is still going to run specifically through him in the passing attack. And then we have Nico Collins, my number 13 overall player, who was the wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game last year, but that includes some games where he was injured and one game where he left extremely early. Let's actually filter some stuff out here. Because if you take those games out where he left early, Nico Collins last year was the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy points per game, believe it or not. And over his first 4 games of the season before his hamstring injury that limited him for really the next 1 to 2 months of the season, kept him out for 1 month, limited like the next 2 to 3 weeks when he came back, he was averaging 22 fantasy points per game, 11 targets per game, on 122 receiving yards per game. An absolute beast, a top 2 fantasy wide receiver. despite battling with Stefon Diggs, who was producing during that time and healthy the first month, and tanked out. But now if you can see the team changes page in the Fantasy Blueprint, again, you can check it out down below, jointheblueprint.com. You can see here Stefon Diggs is gone. He's now on the Patriots. Tank Dell is going to miss this season with an injury. They bring in Christian Kirk, probably a downgrade from Stefon Diggs compared to last year's Stefon Diggs, if I'm being honest. And they bring in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, both wide receiver rookies out of Iowa State, both solid rookies who I do like. I think Jaden Higgins is going to make an impact right away in the NFL, but not in some way that's going to like dramatically take target share away from Nico Collins. DJ Stroud and Collins have been building chemistry the last few years. We saw it flourishing last year when Collins was healthy, and I think we're going to definitely see it again this year. Now we start off tier 4 with my number 14 player, Brian Thomas, and my number 15 player, the first tight end we'll talk about, in Brock Bowers. Starting with number 14, Brian Thomas. I mean, he might have had the quietest 1,300-yard season ever last year, and it was mostly fueled by stuff that we love in fantasy for wide receivers. Downfield targets of 20-plus yards and red zone targets that often lead to touchdowns. He was top 5 in nearly every explosive category, and his late season run from weeks 13 to 18, well, let's check it out. He was second in fantasy points per game, averaging nearly 100 yards per game. He had 5 touchdowns, and that was despite Mac Jones throwing him the football. But now he gets Trevor Lawrence back, who is currently healthy right now, and if we look at Trevor Lawrence's offseason and really the Jaguars, well, they lost 2 of their top targets from last year. Outside of Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk is gone, Evan Ingram is gone. Now, of course, they did bring in some guys. Diami Brown to cover on the outside, I think, is an interesting number 3 wide receiver option, but the big one, Travis Hunter, who will probably play some snaps on defense, but mostly be a wide receiver, one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a very long time. But we already know that Brian Thomas proved it. Like, Travis Hunter has to prove it in the NFL. Brian Thomas proved it in a major way last year. So Brian Thomas is going to be a top 15 player. He's not a top 10 player for me anymore like he would have been, because Travis Hunter, a legit good wide receiver, is also on this team now. And we should also mention Liam Cohen is there. The offense should get better overall. Now for my number 15 overall player, it's Brock Bowers, who didn't just break out as a rookie or like break rookie tight end records. He broke overall rookie records, because Brock Bowers had 112 receptions. I mean, him and Malik Neighbors, we had a bunch of great rookies. I mean, Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas, of course, were also catching a lot of balls, but this was the most ever of a rookie. I mean, you talk about guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, elite rookie years. Brock Bowers had a better rookie season in terms of catching passes, and he put up nearly 1,200 receiving yards. And if you want to talk about just how important he was to his offense, total targets last year, like the only guys to hit over 160 were Malik Neighbors and Jamar Chase, right? I was going to say Justin Jefferson, but he hit over 150. He was number 4. Brock Bowers was number 6. So only these 5 wide receivers, elite wide receivers, and very quietly, Drake London and Garrett Wilson are in that category of elite target volume last year. Those were the only guys to see more target volume than Brock Bowers did. And now heading into year 2, Brock Bowers should still see a lot of target volume. And that target volume should only get more accurate, because he's going from Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell to now having a massive upgrade with Geno Smith there. I mean, Bowers is already a top 3, if not top 1 tight end in fantasy. It should happen again. There are some concerns. There's a reason why he's not a top 12 overall player. The offense might become more run heavy. They did bring in some wide receivers in the NFL draft that they probably, at least Deontay Thornton and Jack Bech, are going to be better than the guys they had like DJ Turner and Trey Tucker last year. Jacoby Myers clearly took a step forward as an outside and in the slot receiver once again last year, but Brock Bowers is still the priority in the passing attack here. We continue in tier 4 now with my number 16 overall player in Josh Jacobs and number 17 Jonathan Taylor, a couple of workhorse running backs. And Jacobs overall last year, he kind of flew under the radar, but when Jordan Love was actually healthy, Jacobs was the RB2 overall in fantasy points per game. Now that stretches from week 7 to week 15, the second half of the season, and here's exactly what he did. He scored a touchdown in 8 straight games. He had 12 total touchdowns during that stretch and was averaging over 110 total yards per game. And now he gets another full season in this role, another full offseason with the team. Jordan Love hopefully doesn't get injured in week 1 again, so it's going to be a healthy Jordan Love, and there's no real competition added. It's still the same guys as last year with Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks, who couldn't take the backfield over from Jacobs or really steal a lot of work. And then there's Marshawn Lloyd, who should be returning from injury this year, entering his second season. Maybe if Lloyd is healthy and actually looks good, he can take some third downs away from Josh Jacobs. But as of right now, Jacobs is once again setting up to have 16 plus touches a game. And speaking of over 16 touches a game, that's exactly what Jonathan Taylor did easily, over 20 touches per game easily, to end his season last year. If we're talking week 16 to 18, your fantasy playoffs and championship, this guy went on a tear. During those 3 games, he scored 6 touchdowns, put up 173 rushing yards per game, and averaged 31 fantasy points per game. And now Anthony Richardson might miss more time with his aggravated shoulder. As you can see right here, no timetable for his return per head coach Shane Steichen. It's been reported recently that he's not going to need surgery this offseason, but if that happens, if Anthony Richardson is missing even more time like he did last year and Daniel Jones is going to be the starting quarterback, well, Daniel Jones is more likely to check it down to his running backs than Anthony Richardson. And if Richardson is out, it means even more red zone carries and touchdowns for Jonathan Taylor. And then on the flip side of that, if Richardson does play, well, then it's still going to be a nice situation for Jonathan Taylor overall, because he just doesn't have that much competition. I do think his backups in Khalil Herbert and the rookie DJ DJ Giggins. What are we doing? Sal, can we talk? Can we get the words out? DJ Giddens. There we go. I do think these guys are nice late round sleepers, just like Will Shipley is and AJ Dillon behind Saquon Barkley, because if something does happen to Jonathan Taylor, these guys are going to probably see, like we've seen in past years with Colts running backs, Zach Moss, a couple of different guys last year, like they do produce fantasy relevant flex weeks. But overall, Jonathan Taylor, if he's healthy and can avoid another high ankle sprain, which he seems susceptible to, he's probably going to finish somewhere in the top 5-ish range of rushing yards at the position. Now we'll finish up tier 4 with my number 18 overall player, wide receiver Drake London from the Falcons, and you could easily argue with me that he should be higher up on this list because in his NFL career so far, for the most part, he's had some like unfortunate quarterback play. He's had not the greatest quarterback play, definitely in his rookie year, and then we've seen Kirk Cousins slowly fall off last year. But despite this, he's still been able to earn a ton of targets last year, over 150 targets, top 5 in the NFL. And when Michael Penix came in the final 3 weeks of the season, he averaged 23 fantasy points per game, 13 targets per game, and 117 touchdowns, or oh my God, 117 receiving yards per game. Imagine that, 117 touchdowns per game. What world are we living in? 117 receiving yards per game, which includes week 18, where if you still had your fantasy championship going on and you had him, you know that because he put up a monster performance of 18 targets, 11 more than anybody else on the team, 10 catches, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was a blow up week 18 performance. It was the perfect way to end the season for the Falcons, who did not go to the postseason, and just say, here's a reminder, next year, Michael Penix times Drake London could be something special. Now Drake London gets another full off season with Michael Penix, who's going to be the starter. He has a competent play caller entering year 2 right now as well, and no new target competition was added. If anything, maybe Kyle Pitts gets traded away. This looks like the best situation Drake London has ever had entering a season. Now we start off with my tier 5 with maybe 2 of like the best running backs from last year, and heading into this year look like breakout candidates once again, even though they already broke out. My number 19 player is Bucky Irving. My number 20 is Chase Brown. Now starting with Bucky Irving, quietly one of the best overall running backs last year in fantasy, especially in terms of efficiency when you look at how many fantasy points he scored per snaps that he played. Bucky was top 10 in rushing yards, receiving yards at the RB position, and receptions. 5th in yards per touch, 3rd in juke rate, 2nd in yards created per touch. This guy was so damn explosive and productive every time he touched the football. And maybe my favorite stat of the entire offseason that I found, Bucky Irving last year, this is me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS, be sure to follow, putting out content multiple times every day over there. Bucky Irving totaled 1,513 yards as a rookie. He only played 45% of the snaps. Didn't even play 50% of the snaps, had over 1,500 rushing yards as a rookie. Insane. And after the Bucs came back from their bye week, from weeks 12 to week 18, during the end of the season, Bucky Irving became their guy and was the running back 2 overall in fantasy, averaging over 21 fantasy points a game. Now I'll go back to this tweet here and reference it. Over 21 fantasy points per game, RB2, 45% of the snaps on the season. Imagine a world where Bucky Irving sees 55 to 60% of the snaps. He has an outcome where he can finish as easily a top 3 running back or number 1 overall in fantasy if that does all play out and everything hits, because we literally just saw it last year. And we also saw it with Chase Brown, who he didn't take the job until like mid-season, but once he took it, I mean, he stole this job. Zach Moss got a little bit injured and he never looked back. Chase Brown dominated. During that stretch of games, exactly the second half of the season, these final 8 games, over 20 fantasy points per game. The dude was catching 5.8 balls per game. Insane. And between his receiving and rushing yards, he easily had over 110 total yards per game. He was a monster. His pace during that time, if you take those 8 games and put it over an entire season, that 17-game pace, over 2,000 total yards, 400 touches, Christian McCaffrey type production is what we saw those final 8 games last year from Chase Brown. And I kind of briefly touched on it, that this guy was averaging 4.8 catches per game over his last 8 games. The Bengals defense still stinks. The Bengals defense, once again, they kind of neglected it this offseason. It still stinks. They're still going to give up a lot of points. Chase Brown is still going to have to be out there with Joe Burrow throwing the ball 35 to 40 times a game, and he's probably going to catch another 3 to 4 balls a game. Chase Brown, that is important for half PPR and PPR formats. And all offseason, we were waiting for them to add something serious in terms of competition. Zach Moss coming back healthy. He might even be cut by the time you're watching this. Like, he's not getting a ton of great reviews in practice. All they add, a 30-plus-year-old Samaje Perine, not concerned, and a 6th-round running back in Taj Brooks, which by no means, he's basically the worst version of Chase Brown coming out of college. He's like a clone except worse. Chase Brown has no competition. Literally none. He avoided the J.K. Dobbins signing, the Nick Chubb signing, all the other free agency signings, and Najee Harris, all that, right? There's just nothing here to be worried about. We continue in my tier 5 with my number 21 overall player, Ladd McConkey, and number 22, A.J. Brown, a couple of wide receivers. We'll start with McConkey, who who legit turned into a wide receiver 1 down the stretch last year. Because from week 11 on last season, Ladd McConkey was the number 13 overall wide receiver in half PPR points per game, as you can see right here. I mean, he was only behind some of the best wide receivers in the league. Malik Neighbors, T. Higgins, guys who just finished so highly, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas, right? That's where Ladd McConkey was, just dominating target share on his team. He was top 10 in yards per game, deep catches, and efficiency across the board, including last year. If we look at this tweet right here from Mina Kimes from, I believe, NFL or ESPN, he ranked on throws over 10 yards. The wide receiver with the highest catch rate in 2024 was Amon-Ra St. Brown. The second best catch rate on 10 plus yards was Ladd McConkey at 73%. So a lot of people said Ladd McConkey's only a slot receiver. He can't work downfield. No, he worked downfield as one of the best outside receivers as a rookie last year. That stat shows it. He was able to catch passes, produce after the catch. The dude has the volume. He has the talent. He has his offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, already saying in OTAs and minicamp and entering training camp that Ladd McConkey's only getting better and better, assuming that he could stay healthy, which is something we could say for all wide receivers. He's going to be good entering year 2. And then there's A.J. Brown, my number 22 overall player. Even in a bottom 5 passing offense in terms of volume last year, A.J. Brown was still a top 12 wide receiver, but it was actually even better than that. Because in his games where he was healthy, he once again finished as a top 8 wide receiver, but now he's being drafted way later than that at the end of the second round in drafts. Brown ranked 2nd in yards per route run, 4th in yards per target, and had a 34% target share last year, despite Philly ranking dead last in pass completions and pass attempts per game. I mean, that efficiency is wild. And if the Eagles just go from ranking 32nd to like 26th in the NFL in passing volume, A.J. Brown is going to jump from finishing as the wide receiver 12 to like the top 5 wide receiver again. He's still elite. He's still producing. He just needs a little more volume. My number 23 overall player is De'Von Achane, the Dolphins running back. This guy was averaging 17.6 fantasy points per game. Pretty solid last year, but when Tua Tagovailoa was healthy, De'Von Achane was coming in and averaging, 22.3 fantasy points per game. Over 6 receptions per game is insane. This guy last season was the RB1 overall when Tua was healthy, and here's what he did. He quietly had 78 receptions, 12 touchdowns, nearly 600 receiving yards, and over 50 red zone touches. I mean, his pace with Tua healthy looked like a prime Alvin Kamara. That's the way that he was used, catching 6 balls per game. And now he heads into 2025, and his biggest competition from last year, as we can see in the team changes page in the Fantasy Blueprint, jointheblueprint.com if you want to check it out. His biggest competition from last year, Raheem Mostert, and the year before that, Raheem Mostert's no longer on the team. He's now on the Raiders. Achane looks like the clear running back on this depth chart. The only guys that were added, Alexander Mattison, blah. Ollie Gordon, a 6th-round running back. Interesting, but mostly blah compared to De'Von Achane. Here's what it comes down to. If Achane remains healthy and if Tua remains healthy and Achane sees somewhere around 60% of the snaps, he has top 5 running back, if not RB1 overall in his range of outcomes. And now for the number 24 overall player, it is T. Higgins. People wrote him off last year due to just his injuries last year and the years before that, but T finished last season as a top 5 overall wide receiver in points per game. And from weeks 5 to 18 when healthy, he averaged 18.5 points per game, had 10 touchdowns, and was top 10 in targets, catches, and yards. He was a top 3 player. And now he's still tied to Joe Burrow, still in an offense that should maybe lead the NFL in passing volume once again. And if T. Higgins can stay healthy like he did last year, despite Jamar Chase going off, T. Higgins was still a top 5 fantasy receiver. Imagine a world where Jamar Chase misses 1, 2, 3 games, extended time. T. Higgins is a top 5 week in and week out fantasy receiver. So there you have it. That's my top 24 overall players for 2025 as of right now. And if you've stuck around this long, you're already ahead of most of your league mates. And if you want to go even deeper, make sure to get the free top 50 overall rankings linked down below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com to get those top 50 rankings all tiered out. These are the players you want to be targeting in the first 2 to 3 rounds of your drafts. But if you want to see these 7 players you need to avoid, they're overvalued, you must avoid these guys, well, check out this video right over here. I think you'll like it. YouTube will think you'll like it. It'll help you smack around your league mates. So hey, check out that video.